morning, students. Welcome to this series on international business. Today we will discuss trends in global trading environment, part 1. I am Professor Shoma Sengupta, Professor in Commerce, Kamla Nehru College, University of Delhi. Now we were discussing international environment in our last lecture, and today we will discuss the trends in global trading environment. We will cover the following topics: global trading environment, the recent trends in world trade, impact on businesses, components of global trading environment, and we will discuss two components here: trade policies, strategies. Global trading environment. The global trading environment is becoming complex and volatile. It is characterized by rising protectionism, trade disputes, and geopolitical uncertainty. As you see that the relationships between different countries is changing. There are two groups, three groups, four groups. So, groupism is happening in the international world, and the geopolitical uncertainty continues because of the wars, because of the rift between the countries. This environment presents both challenges and opportunities for businesses. Hence, this calls for a constant monitoring of the global trade trends, adaptability, and strategic prioritization. So, environmental monitoring is very important, and here in this context, we will say the international environment. Global trading environment influences the pattern and growth of international trade, exports and imports, international investment, and the financial flows. We will discuss the recent trends in global trading environment. First, in terms of different elements like increased protectionism. More countries are adopting protectionist policies such as tariffs and trade barriers to safeguard domestic industries. As we have discussed in our previous lectures, the history of the international environment, and we have said that initially there was protectionist measures by the countries, and then after the formation of GATT and WTO, there was more openness, the tariffs and non-tariff barriers were reduced, and that is why they were moving towards a somewhat free trade. But again, because of the changes that are happening in the relations between the countries, and because of many other problems which we have discussed earlier also, that the countries are, even the developed countries, they are resorting to protectionist policies. Another is trade disputes. Escalating trade tensions between major economies can disrupt supply chains and create uncertainty for businesses. As we have seen in the recent past, that the trade disputes and the imposition of tariff by the US on different countries, this is leading to a kind of a tariff war, and this is disrupting the supply chain. Geopolitical uncertainty, like political instability in many countries that we have discussed earlier also, whether it is Pakistan or Bangladesh or the Ukraine and Russia war, or the war of Israel, and now they have included in this war other countries also. So, this is creating a kind of a political instability and conflicts. So, in various parts of the world we are seeing this kind of instability, and this can have significant impact on trade flows and investment. Another problem is which is happening is that in fact it is a boon also, that is the technological advancement. But the old technologies are becoming obsolete very fast. New technologies are transforming the way businesses operate and interact globally, creating both opportunities and challenges. Sustainability concern is another major issue. So, there is this pressure on every organization to work in a sustainable manner, because the environmental awareness or the environmental deterioration that is happening because of overconsumption is prompting the different bodies to take measures, and they are imposing certain conditions on the organizations also to take care of the future environment, present as well as future environment. So, environmental issues including climate change and resource depletion are increasingly influencing trade policies and practices. Now, if we see the impact of global trading environment on businesses, we find that challenges are there, but it is posing some opportunities also, and the organizations are coming up with different strategies. So, if we talk about the impact, the first is supply chain disruptions. So, the trade barriers and geopolitical instability can disrupt supply chains, leading to delays, increased costs and potential shortages. Now, if we see the recent conditions in many countries, we find that there is a disruption in the air route as well as the shipping route, and this is creating problems in supply chain and deliveries. Increased compliance cost is also there. Navigating complex trade regulations and tariffs can be costly and time consuming for businesses. Evolving business models. So, the old business models becoming unfashionable and newer business models are coming up. So, businesses need to adapt their strategies and operations to thrive in a more fragmented and protectionist environment. Need for resilience. Companies must build resilient supply chains and develop strategies to mitigate risks associated with geopolitical instability and trade disputes. So, we find that when one route is unavailable, then the organizations are looking for different routes to reach different places. Newer supply chains are determined and built up. So, this kind of resilience is nowadays needed, because you cannot risk your business by relying only on a few channels. The opportunities and strategies which the recent environmental trend is posing, that we will discuss in the next section. So, first opportunity we can see that new markets. Despite the challenges, global trade still offers opportunities for businesses to access new markets and customers. Adaptability and flexibility. Businesses need to be adaptable and flexible to respond to the changing market conditions and trade policies. So, as we were discussing that the newer models are coming up. So, the businesses are looking for newer business models as well as newer partners. There is a flexibility nowadays. If the old channels or old supply chain is not happening, then you look for another supply chain. If the old ways of transportation or the routes are not available because of the geopolitical conditions, so the newer relationships and tie-ups are being built up between the countries, and they are adapting to these newer things, whether it is technology or market condition or the partners, business partners or supply chains. Innovation and technology. Technological advancements can help businesses optimize their operations, improve efficiency and develop new products and services. So, continuously you will find that in many areas technological development is happening and old technology is becoming obsolete very fast. So, the businesses nowadays, they have to take care of these global trends in technological development and accordingly switch to the newer technologies. Networking and collaboration. Building strong relationships with partners and stakeholders can help businesses navigate the complexities of the global trading environment. Strategic prioritization is another opportunity or strategy we can say. Companies need to prioritize their investments and focus on areas where they have a competitive advantage. Focus on sustainability, as we have discussed in the previous section also, that sustainability and the environmental concerns are becoming a prominent issue, and it is offering both opportunities and a kind of a strategy you have to develop to remain sustainable. So, adopting sustainable practices can enhance a company's reputation, attract customers and improve its long term competitiveness. So, when we talk about international business, the certain sustainability or environmental standards you have to adhere to, while doing business with many countries. So, many countries have restrictions. If you are not using any of the technology which is sustainable or which is environment friendly, then they will not accept your products. So, that kind of certification is needed. Say in case of automobiles, they have to meet a certain environmental standards like Euro 6, Euro 7, or in India we have Bharat 6 or Bharat 7. Then staying informed, keeping up to date on trade policies, geopolitical developments and technological advancements is crucial for businesses to make informed decisions. So, continuously the businesses have to monitor the environment and get the up to date knowledge and policies they have to create accordingly. Now, the components of global trading environment. So, the first there are different components. The first is trade policy and strategies, then trade barriers, trade agreements, trading blocks, trade trading. We will discuss each of these components one by one. They are not watertight compartments, in the sense that one component may be affecting the other component. So, and they make up a total, in totality we can see what kind of policy or strategy is there in a country. So, first we will discuss the trade policy and strategies. So, when we talk about trade policy, international trade policy refers to the set of rules, regulations and agreements that govern the exchange of goods and services between countries. So, different countries may be having different trade policy, and that becomes a kind of a strategy that boils down to a strategy of a country. It encompasses a range of measures including tariffs, subsidies, quotas and trade agreements designed to shape how countries interact in the global marketplace. The primary goal of trade policy: promoting fair competition, protecting domestic industries and ensuring the smooth flow of trade. Now, out of the policy you can create the trade strategies. So, whatever is the policy of the government of a country, that will lead to trade strategies. Trade strategies refer to a country's approach towards imports and exports, and it has an impact on volume and composition of exports and imports, pattern of investment, direction of development and competition. So, when we also, it will affect cost conditions, entrepreneurship in a country, consumption pattern. When we talk about the types of trade strategies, it can be inward oriented trade strategy or outward oriented trade strategy. And the outcome of total outward oriented trade strategy may be free trade strategy. So, we will discuss each one of them one by one. The first is the inward oriented trade strategy. As the name suggests, that in this strategy the country gives priority to the domestic production over foreign trade. So, it can be called as an import substitution strategy as well, and the aim is to protect the domestic industry from foreign competition through different measures. So, the measures are of course the tariff and non-tariff barriers that they can utilize. So, protection measures are tariff and non-tariff barriers, quantitative methods, administrative restrictions like licensing. There is a kind of a bias against the foreign trade in case of inward oriented trade policy, because it discourages imports. Export suffers, encourages high cost and non-competitive economy by protecting domestic market. So, before the 1990s, most of the countries in the Eastern Europe as well as in Asia, they were having inward oriented trade strategies. So, like in our country, before the second generation reforms that took place in 91, 92, and in other countries which later on disintegrated like USSR, in even China, these countries had this kind of an inward oriented trade strategy. Developing nations generally adopt this kind of strategy, as we have discussed that India adopted it in the past, but economic liberalization that took place in many countries as well as in our country, and also the WTO, World Trade Organization's different guidelines regarding the tariff barriers, that has led to, because they tried to reduce the tariff barriers, and this has led to the developing nations to slowly go outward oriented. So, the next strategy which we are going to discuss is the outward oriented trade strategy. So, in outward trade strategy, as we have discussed that mostly the developed countries used to have the outward oriented trade strategy, but the developing nations also, when they some disintegrated, some liberalized, they also moved towards outward oriented trade strategy. This is an open and neutral strategy, and this does not discriminate between purchase of domestic goods and imports. So, no special protection is given to the domestic goods, they are at par with the imports. So, the customers are having more choice. Production, there is no discrimination in terms of production also for the domestic market and export market. You can produce anywhere. The product can be produced anywhere and it can move to your country. Outward oriented trade strategy is neither in favor of exports nor against import substitution. So, this is different from export promotion strategy. It is simply saying that there is no distinction between the domestic product and the foreign product. That is outward oriented trade strategy, and there is no, they are not putting artificial barriers. But the outcome of outward oriented trade strategy, we will say that the merits are, it expands the scope of the international business, it creates opportunities for global sourcing and encourages cost and efficiency consciousness in domestic firms, and it helps to increase competitiveness. So, when there will be competitiveness, then the product quality will be better, the customer will be truly considered as a king because they will have more choice, and the price of the commodity will be less as well as the quality will be higher. If we go for extreme outward kind of a or oriented trade strategy, later on we can find that there can be free trade strategy. So, that means no artificial barriers at all. So, it means the trade that is free from all artificial barriers such as tariffs, quantitative restrictions, exchange controls, etc. So, it is a kind of a total outward oriented trade strategy. And the WTO envisages this kind of free trade strategy among each and every country. The arguments in favor of free trade strategy is, first, specialization. Each country specializes in the production of those goods in which it has comparative advantage or competitive advantage. This leads to economic utilization of world's productive resources. So, see, if there is free trade strategy, the products will be produced in that country where they have the specialization or some kind of competitive or comparative advantage, and then they can freely move from one country to another. The only difference in the prices will be because of the transportation cost. So, that is the argument in favor of free trade strategy. So, the outcome will be the best because each of the countries specializing in the products in which they have some advantage. Then competition. It promotes intense competition in domestic as well as in the world market. Inefficient producers have to improve their efficiency or they have to quit, because the domestic firms will not survive until and unless their product quality is at par with the foreign products, because it is a free trade kind of a situation. Consumers will benefit. It saves the consumers from exploitation by breaking monopolies, makes available a larger variety of goods from cheapest sources. Less corruption will be there because it reduces the scope of corruption, which flourishes under a corrupt practice when there are more of licensing. Then trade barriers and protectionism. This is the second component of the global trend or global environment, trading environment, and that is trade barriers and protectionism. When we talk about the inward oriented trade strategy, the outcome will be the trade barriers. So, as I said that the points are interrelated. So, when we talk about trade barriers, this leads to protectionism. Trade barriers are government induced restrictions on international trade, often implemented to protect domestic industries or for other strategic reasons. And the forms of trade barriers may be, as we have discussed earlier also, tariffs, non-tariff barriers, tariffs, embargoes, non-tariff barriers like quotas, regulations, standards, many kind of formalities may be there. So, administrative delays can be introduced. So, these can be kind of trade barriers. So, this leads to protectionism. So, protectionism grew because of different crises like currency crisis, oil crisis, debt crisis, recession, trade deficits, unemployment, which are happening in one part of the country or one country or one region of the world. And this, if you do not have barriers, this will move to your country as well. So, that is why the countries, they try to protect themselves, and that is why they put artificial restrictions, so that these kind of crises do not move to their own country. And moreover, they want that the domestic business should also flourish. So, tariffs have been reduced drastically since creation of GATT and WTO. So, when there was general agreement on tariff and trade, and later on World Trade Organization, they always they strive to reduce the tariff barriers, so that more of free trade could take place. The objectives of trade barrier or protectionism are to protect domestic industries from foreign competition. Sometimes the domestic industry is at a very infancy stage. So, you wanted to protect it. This is what happened in our country, because after independence we wanted that certain industries should be indigenously flourish, and that is why we had many restrictions, so that the Indian companies get the platform to flourish and grow. So, and later on when they grew, and then we wanted that the foreign companies should also enter Indian markets, then we opened up our economy. So, this also another objective is to achieve a favorable balance of payment position. You see, when your import bills are higher, then what will happen? You will have a negative balance of payment position if your exports are not that high. So, to conserve the foreign exchange resources, have a favorable balance of payment position, you put artificial barriers or trade barriers. To discriminate against unfriendly nation, you would not like to buy from a nation which is unfriendly. So, we have cancelled the contracts with Turkey and Azerbaijan, because they supported Pakistan in a recent 3-day war that took place between India and Pakistan. To curb conspicuous consumption, sometimes some of the countries, they do not want that the people of their country they should conspicuously consume or over consume products, and that is why they build a kind of an artificial trade barrier. So, this happened in erstwhile USSR, the Soviet Union, where they did not promote conspicuous consumption, and there was a barrier kind of thing. It happened in many of the socialist or communist country. Right now also you will see this type of barrier in North Korea. To mobilize public revenue, when you have trade barriers, then the goods which are entering into your market, they have to pay heavily the duties, and this generates public revenue or revenue for the exchequer of the country. To encourage indigenous research and development, so you want that indigenous research and development should happen, and you should not, this can happen only if you can put a barrier on the foreign goods. To direct foreign trade in accordance with the country's priorities. Now, the arguments for protection is that they are infant industry, protecting new industry against foreign competition, employment, growth of indigenous industries, expands employment opportunities in domestic industry. Key industries should develop, to develop own key industries like iron and steel, petrochemicals, etc. So, you are investing in heavy industries, and this you can reap the benefit of this in future. But if foreign goods are available easily in these sectors will never grow. So, that is why you put barriers. Such industries are essential for development of other industries and for the economy as a whole. Diversification, there is a need to develop a range of industry providing strength and stability to a country. Balance of payment, improves balance of payment position by restricting unnecessary imports, safeguarding and shortage of foreign exchange. Better terms of trade will be there, import duties, quota can improve terms of trade, obtain large quantity of imports for a given amount of exports by imposing tariff. Fear of counter tariff and quota by other countries may also be there. Anti-dumping is another problem to protect domestic industries, to protect home country from transmission or recession from abroad. Strategic trade policy to gain comparative advantage in high-tech industries. National defense is another consideration. India's dependence on foreign countries for defense equipment and oil makes it vulnerable. Must develop own industries for producing defense equipment and other industries of strategic importance. There are certain arguments against protection, like domestic producers become less quality conscious, leads to domestic monopolies, discourages innovation, encourages corruption, reduces volume of international trade, leads to inefficient utilization of resources and harmful for consumers as it increases prices and reduces varieties. So, if we talk about the trends, the global trend shows that now the barriers are increasing, though WTO tried to restrict it and non-tariff barriers are increasing, there is a trend of protectionism in advanced countries. So, summarize, we can say global trading environment influences pattern of growth of international trade. Recent trend in global trading environment indicates increased protectionism, trade disputes and geopolitical uncertainty. The components are trade policy and strategy, barriers, agreements and trading bloc. Trade policy is the set of regulations and agreements that govern the exchange of goods and services between countries. Strategies may be outward oriented or inward oriented. Inward oriented trade strategy gives priority to domestic production. Outward does not discriminate between domestic and foreign products. Free trade strategy is like free from all artificial barriers. And lastly, trade barriers or protectionism refers to government policies that restrict imports to protect domestic industries. Thank you, students.